This anime is really bringing us on a wild adventure. Dragon Ball Daima is bringing us so much lore, and it's proving that it's a must-watch for Dragon Ball fans. I really love this episode, and this episode's title was Daima. And like I said, it is consistently bringing more and more lore every single episode. And because of that, I really feel like they're not wasting our time like a lot of Dragon Ball fans are thinking about Dragon Ball Daima. So let's go ahead and break this episode down. So the episode starts out with Glorio, Shin, and Goku leaving Earth at a surprisingly fast rate as Goku has noticed. Shin tells him that it's because the Demon Realm's planes function on magic, so they're very fast. Shin asks Glorio if they are headed to Warp Sama, in which Goku is a little bit confused as to who that is. Shin then tells him that it's a transit point from the Demon Realm to the outside world, and that one must pass Warp Sama to get to the Demon Realm. Shin asks Glorio where is the closest Warp Sama to Earth, and Glorio tells him that it's near planet Batapi of the Raka system. Now right there, this tells me that there is a Warp Sama pretty much scattered throughout all of the universes. There's not just one. It's at that point that Shin wants to confirm with Glorio that he indeed was asked to come get Goku. He says yes, and the request came from the king of the third demon world, and he asked him this so that way Goku could defeat King Goma. Goku asks how strong Goma is, and Glorio tells him that he's small but he's crafty and he has amazing magic power. But Glorio is not worried about him since Goku did defeat Majin Buu, so he should be able to defeat King Goma. It's at that point that Goku says that he really wants to hurry up and rescue Dende, and we notice that Shin is very wary of Glorio. And you kind of notice this multiple times throughout the episode where Shin and Glorio are kind of giving each other the side eye. So hopefully that kind of gets revealed in later episodes as to why that is happening specifically. A little bit gets revealed later in this episode, but I'll get to that in just a second. The trio arrive at planet Batapi, and Shin wants to relay the location to Kibito so that way the other group can actually follow them. They then travel to the other side of the planet, and Goku notices Warp Sama, which is that giant fish that we saw Goma and the others use in the very first episode. Goku says that he kind of looks like a giant goldfish and consistently makes these type of comments to him, and I do mean consistently. And while he's making these comments, Shin is trying to get him to stop since Warp Sama is known for being very sensitive and he will deny passage because of that sensitivity. It's at that point Warp Sama asks them all to identify themselves, in which Glorio does so, and he tells Warp that Goku and Shin are from the Demon Realm as well. Warp Sama asks to see their ears to confirm if they are demons, and yes, we've noticed this throughout all the first 3 episodes that every time they bring up the whole pointy ears thing, it's whether or not they are demons. And by this point, it's pretty much confirmed that everybody that has a pointy ear is essentially from the Demon Realm, whether or not it's their ancestors or them themselves. So Warp does see Shin's ears, and he notes that he's definitely from the Demon Realm. He then asks to see Goku's, and that's when Shin turns Goku's ears pointy temporarily, so that way Warp actually allows them through, and which he does. And I actually thought that was kind of funny because we've never seen Goku in this particular state before, but again, now we have Goku with pointy ears, so Demon Goku there. So like I said, Warp approves, and then he asks for the pin number, and it's at that point that Shin is confused, and Glorio explains that you must submit an application beforehand to receive a pin number. Shin notes that they never needed a pin number beforehand. Glorio gives Warp the pin number, and they're allowed to proceed into Warp Sama. As they're in Warp Sama's mouth and they're getting ready to go through the portal, Shin then remembers that he needs to relay the pin number to Kibito, but at that point it's too late because they're literally in the process of warping. And it's at that point that they arrive at their initial destination, and Goku asks if this specifically is the Demon Realm, and Glorio tells him that this is just a relay point and that the Demon Realm is divided into 3 worlds. And it's at that point that the camera kind of pans over to these different colored hatches, and then Glorio explains how each hatch leads to a different demon world and who can actually access each hatch. The first hatch being only 4 palace members for the first demon world, and then Glorio tells the group that they are entering the 3rd hatch, and then Shin happens to state that the 3rd hatch is actually the farthest from the first demon world where Goma is located, started and that they should at least go to the second one. Glorio tells him he only got clearance for the third demon world. And again, this is another point to where Shin kind of gives Glorio a specific look because he's a little suspicious of Glorio. So once they go through the hatch, they actually warp again and they warp into the third demon world. It's at that point the group seemingly come into the third demon world through Warp Sama's butt, and I thought that was actually kind of funny. I love the little jokes that Dragon Ball tends to just throw out there in all its shows. Again, this is classic Toriyama. Goku is amazed at how the demon realm looks. It's at that point that Shin is a little bit concerned that he wasn't able to give the pin number to Kibito, in which Goku tells him that the other group will be okay and not to worry about it, essentially. Because we all know that's how Goku is. Very nonchalant, even in the most serious situations. So it's at that point that Goku notices what Shin tells him is the third demon world tunnel, and it's actually sealed at this point. Shin says that it used to allow demons to freely travel to and from the different demon worlds, and he states that by the time he was very young, someone had placed a shield of light over it, and that this is the reason as to why warp even exists, and that people have to use him to travel to the different worlds in the demon realm. Glorio states that the only ones who can use Warp Sama are people from the first demon world and select members of the second. And it's at that point that Shin then asks him how it is that he can actually use Warp Sama then. Glorio tells him he does work in the first demon world. Suspicious, Shin then asks again what sort of work. Glorio hesitates a little bit and then he says this and that. So Glorio is definitely being very, very suspicious, and Shin is rightfully so worried about that. And then the group continues to fly on, and Goku notices a statue that is not in the best of shape, and Glorio tells him that it is the previous demon king and it's Deborah. Goku then states that when he heard of the demon realm, he thought it'd be more creepy, but it's not that different from Earth. Shin actually tells him that though it may seem to be the case that the demon realm is entirely different in its ecology, and that there are plants and animals he's never seen before. Goku then asks Glorio if they can actually land so that way he can get some fresh air, because obviously Goku's not going to be one to sit there and sit still for so long. Once on the ground, Goku notices something smells kind of bad and that the air is all stiff, which makes it hard to move. Glorio tells him that it's simply some gas in the air and it's really harmless. And then it's at this point where Shin says that this is the first time that he's been to the third demon world, and Glorio asks him if he's a Glend, and which Shin says yes. Now, I thought this was very, very interesting because as we know, the original lore for the Supreme Kais is that they specifically came from a place called the World Core, and that the Kais are originally known as core people, and that this planet technically existed outside of the multiverse. And it was very similar to the world of the Kais from what we know of. But there on the World Core, there are these gigantic trees called kaiju, and sometimes core people, Supreme Kais, can sprout from these trees, specifically from magic fruits. And depending on the type of fruit, depends on whether or not, you know, you get a Supreme Kai or just a regular core person. And then also, sometimes core people can be evil, and that's where the whole Makaioshin thing comes from. And in the original lore, any of the Makaioshin were then sent to the demon realm. So I'm really curious as to how Toriyama is changing this particular bit, and whether or not a lot of that original lore that he gave us in like the guidebooks and whatnot is going to meld within Daima. I'm hoping at the very least the second demon world is going to kind of be what the core world was at the very least, and that tree, the kaiju tree, still exists within the second demon world. But again, this is yet to be seen. This is just, you know, me hoping that this lore still kind of meshes into Daima, and that old lore that we kind of know of isn't just thrown to the wayside. Now, if it is, again, I'm truthfully not going to have any problems with it, because again, it did come from random guidebooks and whatnot. So realistically, whatever we get from Daima is going to be the actual canon. So people, please don't sit here and get your butt hurts about this, because I know for a fact that people are going to go crazy about this entire statement. So let's continue with the review. So it's at that point that Glorio says he's sure that Glenn's used to live in the second demon world, and that him and his sophisticated kind never had any reason to come to the third demon realm. Shin then notices the emotion within Glorio's statement. So again, Shin is noticing everything that Glorio does and says, the way he's carrying himself. He's peeping it all, right? So it's at that point that we find out that there are actually bandits watching them, and the bandits begin to attack the group with bows and arrows. But surprisingly, the arrows are very slow, and Goku notices this. Glorio then tells him that it's because the air is very heavy because of that gas. And then we see how nimble Glorio is, because he maneuvers out of the way of all the bows and arrows and whatnot. He pulls out his blaster and he pretty much shoots all the rocks and whatnot right up under the bandits, and he kind of scares them all. So it's at that point that we head back to the ship, and then Shin asks Glorio where they are currently headed to. He tells them that for the night they will stay in a hotel, and tomorrow he'll take them to see King Caden. And I'm assuming that King Caden is the king of the third demon world that he got the whole mission from, because Shin then asks him that exact question. But Glorio looks at Shin very mysteriously. Not only is Shin suspicious of Glorio, but Glorio is also suspicious of Shin. And it's probably because Shin is asking him all these questions throughout this entire ride. So while on the way to the hotel, they see a floating volcano, and Glorio tells them that it's the reason that the gas is in the air, and that's why the air is so heavy. So Goku ends up figuring out that that's the reason why it stinks, and maybe no one would notice if he would happen to fart. And then out of nowhere, a volcano near them ends up erupting, and Goku actually does fart. So again, classic Toriyama with all these little jokes. So Glorio then lands the ship in a small town, and then he goes to find a hotel. But while in the town, everyone seems to be looking at the group, but more importantly, Goku. And I'll get into that in a second. So they walk into a hotel, and Glorio gets them 2 rooms, which Goku and Shin share a room. He tells them that he'll come and get them in the morning, but Goku tells him he's very hungry, so Glorio takes them to a local bar to get burgers. As they walk into the bar, everyone gets quiet and just stares at them. They sit and ask Goku how many burgers he wants, and he says he wants 5 since he ate before they left the lookout. Shin and Glorio only grab drinks. Once they get their food and drinks, Goku thinks the burgers taste really good, and he asks what type of meat this is from, and then Glorio tells him do not ask, because the burgers do look a little funny. But nonetheless, Goku said that they good, but we all know how he is. It's at that point Goku starts to get questioned by another demon within the bar, and tells him he has round ears and that he's definitely not from the demon realm. Glorio tries to be nice to him by telling him to get lost, but the demon and the others with him presses the situation. It's at that point that a bar fight begins, and we see that Glorio can actually fight. He's not just going to use his blaster. And then Goku also steps in while simultaneously eating his burger. And I thought this whole little sequence was very cool, because not only is Goku sitting there fighting while he's eating, he's actually putting in work. When Goku finishes the last burger that he has in his hand, he says that it's hard to move, and then he begins to stretch and says that this fight will help him get used to the air, and then he turns up the heat on them and finishes the last of them. Like I said, this whole sequence was very cool. I loved every little bit of it. We're getting some action now finally within Dragon Ball Daima, and I know all you battle crazed people that love battle anime are like, finally, why did it have to take 3 episodes? Daima's finally getting good, or whatever you have to say about Daima, because y'all only want the fights and the action scenes within Dragon Ball. You don't care about the lore. But think about it, the lore is what's important. The lore is what makes the show. Yes, the fights are cool, but pay attention to everything else so you can actually know what you're talking about when you talk about Dragon Ball. But I digress. After the fight, Goku says he's getting the hang of his smaller body's balance and its sense of distance. He then says he's still hungry, and Glorio gets him another burger. Then the episode ends with the group sleeping throughout the night, and while they're sleeping, the demons that Goku and Glorio beat up in the bar end up stealing their plane. And then when the group wakes up and heads out and they go to the dock or whatever, that's when they notice that their plane is missing, or it got stolen essentially. But that was essentially the episode. Honestly felt like it was way too short, but it was just your regular 23-minute episode. Again, I thoroughly enjoyed this episode. I'm loving the lore that Dragon Ball Daima is giving us, especially with different things about Shin and other things about the demon realm, like the 3 demon worlds and whatnot. I'm loving it all, and I cannot wait to get to more of the action scenes. Yes, like I said, I love the lore, but I like the action too. But the lore is what's important. I just feel as if with the small bits of action that we're getting, once they actually turn the heat up and get to the fight scenes, the real fight scenes, the fight scenes will look so amazing because of how amazing these small little cuts within a bar fight, mind you, are. And it's crazy that we get a bar fight within Dragon Ball. I never thought I would have seen a bar fight within Dragon Ball, but here we have it. Let me know what you thought about this episode in the comment section below and what you've been thinking about Dragon Ball Daima as a whole so far. We have 3 episodes. And if you enjoyed this video, be sure to go ahead and like and share it out and subscribe to me, and then ring the bell to receive notifications so that way you know every time I happen to upload a new video. And with that being said, I'm going to catch y'all in the next one. So y'all have a great rest of your day. Peace.